of the village is Wolof, and the Poulars live off to the side. They do not mix. What I noticed were clicks, that people were using clicks. So I have a few quick video clips so you can see what's going on. Here is the click. You can say wow, which is the word for yes, or you can say oui. They are also francophone. Or you can use a click. So let's see if you can hear this. Can you hear it? This is Bamba. And this is Bamba's brother Ajma, who also clicks, but he uses a different click to say wow. Some of you do this. Yes, that's what we're going to be looking at, because I think these spread. I think these spread everywhere. So this is the click for no, so you can say no, or you can, dadat is the word for no, you can say dadat, or you can use this click. This is Kampogay. He keeps laughing. He thinks it's, I mean, what was really fun is everybody was having a lot of fun doing this work with us, and he's a really sweet guy, so he's just one of those people who enjoys life, so we would record him and he would laugh. Everyone does that. And then there's a click, I think maybe you did this, is chiptu, which means it's something, it doesn't mean anything, it means, it's not a word in English, it's I don't like something, or it's bad.
Wow.
Can you do that? I thought so. I wanted to show you something. Here's Kosoke. So de facto means again, See, he's making the same sound, but he's not doing. Bamba's really doing the.
Wow. So that's actually so my hypothesis is that these have spread. My hypothesis is that the clicks are highly salient and they spread. And the thing too is that you find once you get used to them, they're contagious. You want to click. It's just fun and useful. So I want to show you something else that's being lost. It's whistled speech. Have you seen whistled speech at all? Whistled speech is found all over the world. It's highly endangered. It's used to communicate across long distances. In particular, well, across long distances, the whistle sound travels further than the speech sound, and often if people can't see one another. It's only used in areas where there aren't huge geographic obstructions, but among hunters, to talk to one another, it's more than just signals. So we're going to listen to a recording of Cerdotola. It has only a few elder speakers, highly endangered, and whistle speech itself is highly endangered, not just because the languages, the spoken languages are endangered, but it is now highly endangered because of another reason. What do you use now to communicate across distances? Cell phones. Cell phones. But listen, watch this clip. It's totally cool. It is transcribed in Chinopec and in English. The numbers here, Chinantec was a tone language, so the numbers refer to the tones. But you can see that was a whole conversation with content, not just, I'm over here, or there's an animal you can shoot, right? Huge conversation. This comes from a much longer video, which you can watch online if you'd like. So I'm going to go, are we okay time-wise? Are you all right? Okay. So I'm going to go to Greenland and show you, so this is where I work in Greenland. The Arctic Circle is here. And so above the Arctic Circle, it's so different than here. In July, the sun doesn't set, ever. And then you get up far north, and in the winter, the sun doesn't rise. So we're here very close to the equator. Your days and nights are pretty much the same all year round, I think. Right? So we'll go, and when I do my work here in the summer and it's warm, I wear a light down coat. I'll show you some pictures. We'll go there. I'm working with a group of people who are building a dictionary in Kalaallisut and English. In Greenland was colonized by the Danes. So the second language that they speak is Danish, and they are really mad about it. They are really, really mad. They have done a lot to reclaim their language. They are at the forefront of getting independence, and they've made Greenlandic, Kalaallisut, the national language. But people are still educated in Danish, and they want trilingual. So their solution is not monolingualism. They want people to speak Kalaallisut, Danish, and English. So we're working on a dictionary. Here's the team, and it looks like in this picture, it looks like it's really hot because this is my student from Chicago, Illinois, and this is Akliak, my student from Greenland. It's so hot because of a greenhouse effect. The sun is coming in. This is close to midnight, the middle of the night. We are working. This is what it's like outside. She's wearing a down coat. And Akliak, this is what Greenland looks like. So you can see not much grows. And I'm just going to give you, I'll go through this. One of the things that I like to explain to people that's very cool that we would lose is polysynthesis. And Kalaallisut is a good example of a polysynthetic language. This should look I don't know if you've studied polysynthesis. This should look strange from an African standpoint. But you start with a root and you add suffixes. So we're going to start with a root and build a word. The word, this word, and there's a root, is aklu. That's a voiceless lateral, aklu. And aklu refers to this, which is a seal breathing hole. So this is a really important part of culture. The seal pops up to breathe through the ice. You can add a suffix, ak, and then you get akluak, which becomes a word, and it's something that's like a seal breathing hole, which is the word for a fishing hole. So note that this says something about the saliency, that the seal hole is more salient than the fishing hole. So you can keep adding suffixes. You can add one to make lior, so you can add akluak lior to make a seal-like breathing hole, and then you get put on a verbal suffix, akliorwak. He, she makes a seal-like breathing hole. I'm going to skip to this. So what happens in Kalaallisut is that you can get very, very long words. So here is a long word. That's one word, and you know it's a word because you can't chop it off any place and have it be grammatical. So it translates into, once upon a time there was a plan that they will still be thinking about building a giant telegraph station. So we'll listen to people who say this word. Another thing that they do is tongue twisters. So the word tutu is reindeer, and so people will play games, and these are, again, just examples of things that will be lost. So this sentence, which I can't say properly, dirty reindeer eating reindeer like dirty reindeer eat dirty reindeer, or as dirty reindeer do. We'll see Mika do it. So I'm going to go through one last little bit, if you still have patience. A totally different kind of thing is the speak Sami to me. So we looked at the far north in the map of Europe. Sami is an indigenous language in Europe, Finno-Ugric, and they have a massive revitalization campaign called Speak Sami to Me.
This is interesting because it's all driven by the youth. And young people, like age 20, become Sami language ambassadors. And they have people, they do things on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram to get people to speak Sami. So here they are. There's a lot of different varieties of Sami. So they've decided on 4 as being Sami languages. And you can see these are young people who just agree. They have just agreed to speak Sami, and they sign people up to speak Sami with their friends. It's a cheap kind of program for revitalization. And so one of the things that's potentially being lost in Sami is the traditional Sami yoik. And I'll end with this. I have 2 clips that I want to play you. Sami culture distinguishes between songs and yoiks. You sing a song, but you yoik someone. And when you yoik someone, you do something in honor of them. It's not traditionally a performance art. Sami yoiked for themselves as they are out. They're reindeer herders. They would be out herding reindeer and yoiking. And you learn yoiks. They're passed down. They were very suppressed by Christian missionaries who saw this as a heathen practice and dangerous. And so yoiking itself became a symbol of Sami resistance. I'm first going to play a traditional yoik so you can hear it. This is from an archival recording. So you hear, right? That sounds very traditional, not accompanied by music, by instruments, just yoiking. So now I want to show you one more thing and I'll end. And this is something, it's important to me, even though it may seem a little funny. I want to show you probably the most famous yoiker now is Jan Henrik Fjällgren, who is a Sami from Sweden. And we are going to listen to him yoik. He won Sweden's Got Talent, a big contest. Do you know America's Got Talent, or what are the other ones, like American, you don't know? You know it, okay. So he won Sweden's Got Talent, and this is very important for the Sami because they have been oppressed in Sweden in particular. But what you might not know, looking at him, I don't know if you can tell, he doesn't look very Sami. Sami are very light-skinned. They look more like Betsy than Jan Henrik does. And the thing is that Jan Henrik was adopted from Guatemala by Sami. So he was adopted and raised as Sami, even though he's from Latin America. And he identifies as Sami. He was teased as a kid in school because he doesn't look Sami. We'll see in a minute that he really doesn't look Sami. And now he's become the symbol of being Sami. On top of it, I don't know if you can, well, I can tell from this picture, he's a very good-looking man. And so I saw him perform at Caltiqueno, and the women lined up to have their pictures taken. The young women and the women my age. So he's become a star because he won Sweden's Got Talent. But the reason I had you listen to that traditional yoik is I want you to see now, we'll look at a little clip of the performance, what he's done with the traditional yoik. He's changed it, and that's part of this idea. We have this, when we're talking about traditional languages and traditional cultures, I think we want to be careful about what we're documenting and what we are doing. We want to be mindful because when language and culture is alive, it changes, it develops, it moves forward. And so he's a really good example of someone who's Sami because he was raised Sami. He speaks Sami. He's a reindeer herder. But listen to this yoik. Remember the traditional one. And here's Sweden's Got Talent. This is a kind of a funny clip. He's going Sami.
I love this. I really love this clip. He's now become very famous. You can buy his CDs. You can download them. He's very famous. And when I saw him perform, he actually had backup on the guitar, and they had a fog machine. So there was this fog rolling in, and of course the whole audience was just. They were almost all Sami people there. A few of us who weren't Sami, but everyone falls in love with him. You can see it's not the traditional yoik, but it's a modern yoik, and he's a modern Sami. He's a modern yoik. So that's one of the things to be mindful of as we go and document languages and talk about revitalization. That if something is vibrant and alive, it will change, and you can win Sweden's Got Talent. So thank you. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Professor, for this beautiful introduction. I'm Lineo, a PhD student from the University of China and same time from the Government TV Association. So my major concern is how to remediate or revitalize languages with use of more modern oral practices. That's my main concern. And I have a question. I really appreciate all the facts and the numbers you raised about how we have to care and why we have to care on the endangerment of languages. So my question is, you said definition and technologies. My question is going on technologies. How can we use the new technologies to better revitalize languages? So that's my question, because the main stakes of language revitalization is in these new technologies and measures. So that's my concern about the question, my main concern, because one of the authors, Cerdotola, he said the issue of world heritage cannot now be asked and answered in language savings or surrogate. He said the major stake is how you have to put the languages or the heritage in evidence, or in, he said, mise en scène, scenic presentation. Thank you.
That's a very good question. Thank you very much for your question. I think for the new technologies, open up a lot of possibilities, and in some ways, it's almost up to you. We have, one of the things that has changed radically since I started working is just the recording technology, which is now small, easy to record people, and easy to duplicate if you have it, because it's all digital. So it seems to me that one of the more exciting things that is happening with the revitalization that I've seen is the use of the internet and media for spreading the use of language. Now the problem with that, of course, is if we look at that Sami program, I think the young Sami are doing a very good job of using technology. They have created internet spaces where the only language you use is Sami. So if you agree to speak Sami to me, you sign up for the program, and they have bracelets and buttons that you get. And then the Sami, they call them ambassadors. The Sami ambassadors have set up Facebook pages, and you write in Sami there. The problem, of course, is that you need an internet connection. And lots of places, there just isn't internet connection. So I think the other really exciting and probably more accessible are the use of cell phones and apps on cell phones. More people have cell phones than have internet and computers. And so there are many people in the West, in the US, who are developing apps and different ways of creating that space on the cell phone, which may be more portable. It seems that there are probably going to be more things in the future too. even texting in the language. One of the barriers too, of course, is languages that don't have a written form, and how you're going to deal with that. There's a lot of controversy in language revitalization. Most people assume that to revitalize a language, you need to have a written form and literacy in the language. I'm not sure that that's true. Languages historically weren't written. Our ancestors spoke their languages and they never needed to write them down. But if you want to use new media, then probably texting in the languages is really good. Although it may turn out to be that more and more people will just be doing voice-activated things over their phones and voicemail messages. Some of it, I think that in terms of actually using the technology for revitalization, depends on being creative with the kind of technology you have and what the people have. So a really simple solution that doesn't seem very high-tech but was groundbreaking was the Shuar in Ecuador. Historically, the Shuar, S-H-U-A-R, they were headhunters. Around the year 1900 or so, they were headhunters, and they would kill not only other people but also other Shuar. There was a ritual sort of for young men as a coming of age that they would headhunt. As a result, their culture meant that they lived in small groups and moved around a lot because you could get your head hunted. When their language started to shift, they were forcibly settled, and they made use of radio broadcasts. So that doesn't seem like very high technology, that seems very old-fashioned, but in Shuar country today and in Greenland, internet is extremely expensive. Most people don't have internet. And so people listen to the radio all the time. The radio, there's one television station in Greenlandic, the rest are in Danish and in English, and the radio is actually a powerful and cheap way, if people have radios, to use technology. So sometimes it doesn't need to be very fancy. I'm not sure if that's much of an answer. It's nothing particularly new. It seems it's a question of figuring out what you have and what you can do.
When we discuss why to worry, and then I think who is actually worried? The community of speakers or the linguist. And it looks to me like the linguist is worried. Probably because language endangerment has something to do with the work we do. And then at the same time, I end up thinking, what is the effect of language documentation? Because we want to, for example, have what is original and not what is modernized, like the Henry. And is the art of language documentation not against the natural tendency for language to evolve? Because language has to evolve. The English language is not what it used to be. And now we want to do documentation and have things the way they are and ensure that people maybe continue to speak the way they are supposed to speak. So sometimes shouldn't we just allow language to evolve naturally and get to where it goes rather than documenting things and having them the way they are?
Thank you. Could you hear the question? So he asked a really several questions, very complicated. One is, if we're talking about endangered languages, then who cares? Often it seems like it's the linguists who care, not the communities. The next question is really about documentation, and it's related to that. What are we doing when we document? Are we trying to preserve languages as they are, and shouldn't we just note that languages evolve and English has changed? So those I think are very big questions. I'll give you my answers. First of all, I see two groups. There's the linguists and the communities. And I think it's the linguist's job is to do the documentation. And I'll say why in a second. That if there is going to be language revitalization, it needs to come from the communities. I mean, it would be stupid for me to say, to go to a community here and say, you need to speak your language. I'm a complete outsider, and I'm not going to stay in the community and speak the language. So language revitalization needs to come from the communities. Now, I separated those two groups as if they were completely separate, and they aren't, because sometimes you have linguists coming from the communities. And often, we're finding more and more, and I'll show you some examples this afternoon, people who are community members want to do language revitalization and realize they need to learn some linguistics to do it. They go out and get trained as linguists, and they come back to their communities and do revitalization. But my answer is it's the linguist's job to document, and it's the community's job for revitalization, but it's the linguist's job to help the community if people want them to. So that's the first thing. Why we should document. I completely agree that language is changing, and that's why I showed you the Swedish thing, the Sami, because I think we need to be very careful as linguists when we enter a community and document that we don't want to make people think that they have to speak a certain way. We want to be really careful not to give purist messages. My grandmother didn't. She's passed away now. My grandmother didn't like the way I speak English. She would pretend at times not to understand me. So I would say, can I have a glass of milk? And she'd say, I don't know. Can you? Because she wanted me to say, may I have a glass of milk? I never say may I. So I understand this. What I think as linguists we want to do is take a record of the language as it is at the time. And then that record is useful for multiple things. One is if we care about historical linguistics and tracking things through time, then we will have a record to go back. That's a linguistic question. It's just for linguists, but we have that record. One reason we know that English has changed is we have records. We have a lot of records. So that's very useful from a scientific standpoint. The other reason to capture that record is if the community, it's really easy to find communities that don't care about revitalization. But they might in the future. And so I have some examples this afternoon of languages that were not spoken at all for many generations. And if there were no linguistic records, they couldn't revitalize. But they've actually decided to revitalize, which seems extraordinary. So that record might be useful in the future for communities. I think our challenge as linguists is to create a multi-purpose documentation that will be accessible in the future to communities who aren't trained as linguists, because we think in a different way as linguists. But I think that record is important. But your point is something I've actually been talking about more and more. I think we have made mistakes as linguists, especially when we go into communities, and we naturally want to document the oldest speakers because they're speaking the best. And then we're fueling this belief that they speak the best, whatever language. And then the young people who sometimes aren't speaking because they're afraid of making mistakes, they realize they don't speak the best. So I actually think we have to be really careful and not do that. I think you're right. I agree with you completely. So it's a tricky task, but I think we will be very sorry if we don't have records of these languages. Thank you.
I would like to know, when do we start considering a language as being endangered?
So when we start considering a language being endangered, we normally think of it as when the children don't speak the language and they aren't learning it at home. I think that may be wrong. It may be that, the time may come when it's actually when children go to school, if this language is replaced in the school by a different language. But we normally think of it as that the critical time is when you don't have future speakers being trained. We also need to take into account, and we'll look at some of this afternoon, issues of numbers of speakers and this critical issue of domains of usage. So this is what I was saying about revitalization, having multiple places where you can access the language. You want multiple places where you can use the language. If you can only use the language at home or you only use the language in school, then it's really not doing everything you need to do.
So, but it's that children, that's the critical thing. When children stop speaking the language, then there won't be future speakers, unless you take measures.
Okay, I think we're going to round off